Hey everybody, welcome back to IDP Plus Trends. Tonight we are going to teach you how to be a great fantasy football manager. You might be already, you might be a rookie first year in, you might be experienced, but no matter where you come from, what experience you got, you can always get better. Your teams can always get better, and that's what we're going to help you do tonight. Now, one of my favorite players, Darius Leonard, formerly known as Darius, he would talk about having a maniac mentality. And that's how I like to play fantasy football. I like having that maniac mentality. What I mean by that is being cutthroat as a manager. Listen, we all got money on the line here when we're playing fantasy football. If you're playing in a free league, maybe some of these rules go out the window, but still you play for two things. You play for pride, you play for money, and we all do, right? So no matter if you're an 8-man league, if you're in a 16, 18-man league, we got rules that apply to everybody here. So watching this video, it's going to make you a better fantasy football manager. You might think at times like, man, these guys are cocky. These guys are arrogant, but please listen for the whole story, the whole video, because at the end, I promise you, we play with humility. We play with sportsmanship and integrity. So before we go into it, I just wanted to mention I am Johnny Freaking Fantasy. He is Steve from Average Joe's. You can find our Twitter names under our faces right here. And let's get this money, guys. This is where fantasy football, it's fun to play, but it's really about the money. And like I said, if not, it's about the pride. So we're going to teach you how to be the best fantasy managers tonight. And we have some rules that we are going to mention. And our number one rule is anytime, this is specifically for going into redraft leagues. And also it applies also in Dynasty, but know your scoring, know your opponents, know what innuendos you have in your scoring. Do you have return yard points on? Because if you do, guys like Marvin Mims, guys like Keyshawn Nixon on the IDP side of the ball, Xavier Gibson from New York, those guys are going to have value in those leagues, especially the deeper the leagues are. If you're in an IDP league, is it deep? Is it thin? Because if it's deep, I'm going to have to take some IDP guys earlier than I'd like to, because I'm like a zero, draft capital in IDPs. I like to get those guys at the end. But if you're in a thin IDP, just fade them, especially if you're doing the research or rocking with us. You're going to get the best IDP information out there. Another thing to consider is how deep is your league? Are you playing in a 10-man league? Well, guys, you might not be able to trade as much in a 10-man because you can go to the wire and pick up nice serviceable players in those leagues. If you're playing in a 16, 18-man league, a lot of these rules really hit home with you coming up. And there's really a lot of trading, a lot of moves, a lot of strategy in those deeper leagues. So we got you covered from 8 to 16, all the way in between. Know who you're playing against. If you have sharks in your league that are doing some of these things that I'm going to talk about, me and Steve are going to talk about, it makes it harder, so you have to really get deep into your strategies about it. If you're playing with a bunch of people who we consider casuals, who are going to check, waivers Wednesday on the lunch break at noon, then you can kind of get away with a little bit more in those kind of leagues. Also know if your league the league mates are stagnant. Are they active? That plays a big role in trading. If you know that you're playing with a bunch of deadbeats who really don't check, you're probably not going to be banking on making a lot of trades, a lot of moves during the season. But hey, if they're active, if your league mates are very active, that's a great thing. I promote that. Steve promotes that himself. So those leagues are the most fun because you're going to have multiple chances to make great trades. You might send a guy, if you're like me, send a guy in week 2 and get him back in week 12. Because after all, this is a stock market. Really what fantasy football is, there are no deep ties as much as you like a guy personally or not. This is a stock market. We're in it for money, right? So just know your scoring, know your opponents. Steve, before I move on to my next point, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, that the biggest thing is, like you mentioned, we kind of talk about it, is know your league mates. You've got to know who you're playing against. What type of, are you joining random leagues from like groups that you found online, or is this a home league these are your friends, your buddies that you've known for a long time? Know who you're playing against. It plays a huge factor because are these guys who draft, they're homers. They draft their favorite players based off the team they enjoy watching, or are these guys novices? Are they just somebody who's just starting to get into fantasy? Or like you mentioned, like, again, are these guys that have been experienced, seasoned vets that absolutely know how to play fantasy football? They're strategic. They know what to do. Know your league mates. that will play a big factor in how you approach your drafts, how you approach your trades, how you approach your waivers. And the other thing, like Johnny mentioned, is rosters. Like, are you new super flex? Did you pay attention to when, because there are a lot of people who love signing up. I'm in leagues with people all across the states, probably the world, that I've just met through, and I enjoy those. But did you pay attention when you joined? Did you see if it's a super flex? Is it a keeper? Is it a dynasty? Like, know these formats to help you guys out when it comes to fantasy football. There are a lot of different ways to make fantasy football interesting. So understand your scoring, understand your roster size. What type of formats are they? Are they full PPR? Are they tight end premium? And then again, know who you're playing with. These guys, I've got some leagues that I'm in that I can draft with my eyes closed and end up winning. Or I've got some guys I've been with playing 15 plus years that every single person knows this game inside and out, that you've got to be tip top. So again, know everything that you can when you go into your fantasy football season.
Yeah, good point, man. Especially hits home about the super flex. I was just in a league. One of the quarterbacks, if you've been watching our shows, that I really like this year is Baker Mayfield. I was in a super flex, our IDP guys company, and Nate cheat. He snuck Baker Mayfield, man. I forget who I took the first round. I'm thinking like, man, I'm going to get, I'm 14 out of 16. I'm going to snake around and get Baker Mayfield. Nope. He went, so your sleepers, especially the super flex at quarterback, even though they might be ranked 18, 20 on the rankings, they might go quick. So definitely consider, your formats. Is it a super flex? Is it just one quarterback? Generally, if it's a one quarterback, I like to fade the quarterback position, get like a last year's Jared Goff, maybe this year's like Matt Stafford, something like that. Yeah. You might get lucky. They might outperform like those guys did last year. But yeah, know your scoring in general, and know your rules, know who you're playing against. And takes us next point, going into your draft. When you are drafting, one of my number one rules is do not focus, don't even look, as a matter of fact, at bye weeks. And I know that might sound like a hot take. A lot of people think like, oh, my rankings, I had this guy at 25, but he was available, but I didn't pick him because I had 3 week 12 buys. To me, I don't care about that. And the reason simply is because I'm active in the trade avenue. If I do, hey, I might look at the end of the draft and say, wow, I'd have 7 guys on week 11 bye. It doesn't matter. By week 11, when that bye week comes around, I've already traded some of those guys. And it might not be my intention, but especially if you're fighting to make playoffs, that might be something to consider too. So know yourself, know your team. Are you going to make it? If you're going to be the number 1 seed in week 9, I don't think at that point you might just take the L, or you might, just throw what you have out there and hope for the best at that point. So know yourself and know who you are. If you're somebody who's not active in trades, maybe you do consider the bye weeks a little bit more. But to be a cutthroat fantasy football manager, general rule, do not look at the buys. A lot of guys can get hurt. A lot of guys, there's a lot of variables that, maybe you get offered a nice trade and you can unload somebody, and that's not even a factor by the time the bye weeks come. It's a long season. Trade, be active. If you're not doing that, don't expect to be successful. Steve, anything else you wanted to mention while you're in your draft mode, during a draft?
Yeah, I mean, again, bye weeks are important in some ways, but like you said, bye weeks are something you shouldn't fully focus on. Because if you build a team right, sometimes you're already in a position that maybe you're number 1 in your league and you've got a week 12 bye and you've got 4 guys there. You may not even make a trade because you can take that loss. You can handle taking a loss, right? Know where you are so far and how the season's played out. And with that said, like, while you're doing the draft, always draft the best player that's available. Stop trying to fill a roster based off of players that you need. Like, oh, I need a running back. Well, you may have that need, but if there's a better player available at a wide receiver or a tight end, even though you may have that spot, take them. You can turn them into a trade value, or again, taking players from your league mates because they may need another elite wide receiver. Like, always draft who is best available. Don't focus on the buy. Do not focus on your filling out your roster completely. Sometimes you got to take the best player. And then really everything else kind of falls into place after that. Another thing is really like we've been talking about trades, and something that, Johnny and I'm excited because we're both in the league. I'm really curious how that's going to play out this season for the first time. So But with trades, it's really kind of for the commissioners or maybe people who are in a league who've been talking to the commissioners this upcoming season because we're right around football season. Do you guys have a trade deadline? Is there one that's active? Are you a league that doesn't have a deadline at all and you could trade up until the end of the season? Or do you have a deadline? Or do you have a veto process? Do you veto at all? Do you not veto? Does the commission only veto? Like, these are things that you guys need to have conversations while you're doing starting up a season or renewing a season. Have those conversations before the season starts. And those are really tough conversations because sometimes some commissioners are power hungry. Maybe they want to make all the decisions, right? They think their choice and their decision is best for the league. Have those conversations, and as a commissioner, be open to your league. Like, let people have input. For me, I'm sure Johnny probably agrees. Don't do a deadline and don't veto. There should not be vetoes unless it is an absolute collusion event. Like, do not veto. Like, those are my opinion when it comes to fantasy football. Because otherwise, I think you ruin the full experience. Let people make those decisions. Everyone values players differently. I think you probably think the same way I do. No deadlines, no vetoes unless it's absolutely necessary. But again, have those conversations, whether you're a commissioner or you're in the league and you want to have those make sure you guys are talking that up before the season starts.
Absolutely, man. Everybody got choices. E40 said that in a song. Everybody got choices, and everybody has different ways to play, different strategies. So don't knock them, just because you wouldn't do things the same way. Absolutely good point. Steve, you had mentioned another good point, that it's draft season, man. And you see this trophy sitting behind me right there. I got a nice little trophy piece. That thing's got my name written on it left and right all over the place. We had that trophy sitting there since 2012. And guess what? If you don't have a trophy already, that's okay. Now is a great time. I had to go get mine 10 years ago from an online, or a local shop. If you don't have one of those local, shops around the memorabilia shop somewhere that sells trophies, no problem. You can go to the website Trophy Smack. They have great selection of trophies, not only trophies and medals, but they also have a great draft kit right now. So many names on this draft kit, man. I remember playing in 2010, 2012 when you finally got a draft kit. I was taking, Zach Sudfield, a tight end from the Patriots, and he wasn't even on the list, So those days are kind of behind us. Now they're Trophy Smack brags. They have so many names on there that you don't have to do any write-ins, but I promise you, if you play in a league with me, I'll give you at least one right in there. I'll find one. But hey, the link's in the description of the show. If you want to check out Trophy Smack, get your draft kit, your draft board for this season, because it's draft season, folks. I love it. Moving into our next, I get real shisty around these rules, Steve. Number one, when we're talking about trading here, if in a draft, week one, it doesn't matter at any point of the season. Always not only just look at your team, but look at the other teams too. Number one is in the draft, right? There might be a team out there that has, no tight ends yet. And the top, maybe in your, let's say a 14-man league, and Jelani Woods is out there, and Jelani Woods is a sleeper I really like this year at tight end. And one team out there does not have a tight end. You might have 3 wide receivers already. You might be thinking like, oh, I need a running back. And hey, it might be a dire need. You might have a hole there. You might need to take a running back. But keep in mind, I'm a shark. I am not going to let that person get Jelani Woods for free because it's so, round 15, 16. That's a win for them. So I'm going to take Jelani Woods, not because I need him, but because having depth, having players is having power, right? So I'm going to take that Jelani Woods pick all day. I'm not going to let them get bailed out by simply waiting and getting a good value pick. I'm going to take him after that draft is done. As a matter of fact, I'm literally going to go to that person's team and send them a trade for Jelani Woods. Hey, they might not even know who it is. And guess what? It won't work out. But guess what? Jelani Woods, if he's a sleeper that you really like, it's going to work out for somebody. Some injury is going to happen. Woods will have value at some point. So, look at other teams during the draft, also in the season too. You might find somebody who has a tight end that's hurt, and then Jelani Woods, going back to that example, is useful now to them. Also, say if you're in a 10-man and you pick Jelani Woods, he's going to be a sleeper, and everyone has good top 10 tight ends. Maybe Jelani Woods at that point isn't a must hold, and maybe you can cut bait and pick up somebody else who you think is a good stab to make a good showing later in the year. So always be active when not only with your team, but look at other teams and see their needs as well. Again, don't let people bail out. Don't if it's a super flex and there's a team that only has one quarterback and you might have two already, don't let them get bailed out. Take that quarterback and use it as trade bait. Absolutely. Number, I want to say 8 at this point. This is probably my favorite rule, because I'm cutthroat and I'm a shark, but I don't have any friends in fantasy football. What that means is we all have money on the line. It might be $50, it might be $100, it might be 500, right? So this is a lot of money. I play for two things personally. I play for pride. I play for money. That's it. That's all I play for. So when somebody says like, oh, you did something to screw my team over, or you're playing unethically, as long as it's in between the lines, as long as you're not a commissioner who's going and changing the rules, something like that, it is all fair. You might pick up somebody's, your best friend, as a matter of fact, might have James Conner, who last year went out and now he has Boston Scott, and James Conner is his only 2 running backs in a 16-man league. Guess what? As soon as that injury report comes out that James Conner's out that week, I am picked up Keontae Ingram, immediately sent him a trade, and he might take it, he might not. Everybody got choices, but I'll tell you what, there's nothing wrong with that because, like I said, my rule is no friends. There are no friends in fantasy football. We all have money on the line. We're all trying to win, and there's nothing wrong with that. Don't feel like just because you might be a bad guy, that doesn't make you a bad guy. Like I said, listen to this whole podcast. At the end, we will be Mr. Nice Guy. But for right now, we're sharks in the water. Do not let anybody off the hook. Pick up any stashes. Pick up any handcuffs if somebody goes down on injury. All that, man. Everything's on the table. Money's on the line. And in the same token, if you're working, guess what? Someone might catch me slipping and they get to the report before me. Hey, I'll shake your hand and say, good pickup, because I shouldn't be in that position. Depth is power, and I didn't have the depth. So now I'm at their mercy for a trade, right? So don't get caught slipping. Don't be in that position at all. Try to do what you can to not, be hurting for a position. Have that depth. Absolutely love that. That was my shiesty take. Steve, I'm going to move on to you about mock drafts, man, before season starts.
Yeah. So one thing before we talk about mock drafts is make sure your boss knows that you're going to be on your phone making waiver wire claims. Right? Just make it very clear. I don't want to hear excuses. You got to make sure they're aware. Football season's coming. You got to pull out that phone and make those waiver claims. As far as mock drafts, look, let's be honest. I love doing mock drafts. I think they're fun. I think a lot of people enjoy it. I think it's something to keep your mind in the game, get some understanding of where players are falling, but do not rely on mock drafts when it comes to your fantasy draft. Too many times have I seen people do mock drafts. They get excited. All of a sudden, they get their rankings all ready to go. They have ideas of where they're going to grab their players, where they're falling. And then the draft happens. And then all of a sudden, that one player you're going to grab, maybe you're going to grab a receiver in the first round, you're the 8th pick. And all of a sudden, you see running back getting drafted ahead of you. So now that idea of, do I need to grab a running back or wide receiver now becomes a big factor. Your whole, I am going to get CeeDee Lamb at the 8th spot may not happen because now everybody's taking the running back position. You got to read the room. You got to understand what's going on. You got to start. And sometimes you even may have to be the one that starts the trend of grabbing certain positions when it comes to the draft, especially when you're the IDP. We get this question a lot. I get it constantly. When should I start drafting the first defensive player? Right. And depending how your scoring is, you may have to draft them early. I know in my home league that I've been doing IDP for 15 years, man, your linebacker may be in your 5th or 6th round because our scoring is so high. They can score better than some receivers and running backs you have in your roster. So you've got to read the room. You might have to start seeing trends. Enjoy your mock drafts. Don't get me wrong. Have fun with them. Get an idea, but do not rely on how those things have gone and be all, it just cannot be. Mock drafts are fun. Do not let it ruin how your draft night goes.
Steve, I got a question for you, man. Rolling into my next segment. You ever heard somebody, I get this all the time. They'll be like, JC, dude, you're sending me a trade for my 1st round pick, my 2nd round pick. You ever get that yourself?
No, doesn't matter.
Good. You play with people who are see it how it is and call a spade a spade. Listen, I'm not disrespecting anybody out there. Everybody I play with, I respect, to the moon and back. But once a draft ends, once the season starts, don't tell me where a player was drafted. Don't tell me he was your first round pick, your second round pick, your third round pick. Perfect example. Now, first rounder, I get it. Maybe a guy slumps a little bit. Maybe Justin Jefferson, his quarterback gets hurt, something along those lines, and you might make a case there. Generally, those first rounders are who we thought they were, right? But let me give you a perfect example here. What that means is, look at a guy like Jerry Jeudy last year, right? Jerry Jeudy was probably in PPR drafts, maybe like a third, fourth round pick. And then you look at a guy like Puka Nacua, right? So Jerry Jeudy, if you had said, like, this is my third round pick, it doesn't matter. He was playing on a Broncos team that Cortland Sutton was the better receiver. It never panned out. Me personally, I didn't have any Jerry Jeudy fan shares because I just wasn't a fan of his game at all. Never was. Knock on wood, I was lucky so far on that take. I think I will be this year too for him in Cleveland. I'm not interested in him at all. But yeah, just going back to my point, Jerry Jeudy and Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua was a fifth rounder. I was in a 16-man. I was in a 12-man last year where I picked up Puka Nacua before the season. And it wasn't like, oh, I know this guy's going to be rookie, of the year status. It was just simply like, I think this guy can be somebody and is overlooked, right? And is in a position to get targets. And that's all I thought. I didn't really know much about him. I don't watch college ball, but he was so valuable. Another guy like Kyron Williams, I've had so many people I've played with that, hey, I was wrong. I sent a trade for I was going to give a guy like Kyron Williams and Puka for like T. Higgins in week 2. And the guy told me, he was like, man, he's my boy too. But he told me, like, man, JC, you pick up these guys and you it's an undrafted guy and you're asking for my second round pick. And maybe he was right. Maybe he was wrong. This season, it didn't work out in his favor. I would have lost that trade. I'm glad it didn't go through. But don't write a guy off because he was undrafted, right? We see this all the time. David Johnson, a couple years back for Arizona, like, guys can have value out of nowhere. Opportunity is absolutely everything. So don't tell me where a guy was drafted. Now, if your team's sitting nice, if your team's sitting nice, I'm probably not going to send you many trades all year. If you don't get many trades offers for me, I think your team's nice. If I'm sending you trades every day, I think you need some help. No disrespect intended, right? So to those teams that, you have everything going for, I'm probably not going to send those kind of offers. And you probably are sitting fine and content with life, and that's all good. But going back to the point I mentioned earlier, having that depth, having a nice team, it takes depth, right? So having depth is power. And especially the deeper league you go, if you're in a 10-man league, you're probably not sitting there like, oh, my bench is so nice, right? But in a 16 and 18-man league, if you have, stash plays on deep on your bench and you got, Zach Charbonnet last year and some top-notch Tyler Algier, so you had some top-notch plugs if guys got hurt, backup running backs, that really does a lot for you. And just having that depth, I might have Jacoby Myers I had one team last year. I had like Tyreek as my wide receiver 1, Puka as my wide receiver 2, had some other solid guys. Like, I might have Jacoby Myers on my bench, but like, I'm not looking at that and like, oh, he's worthless or no. And I'm not going to give him away for free just because my tight end might get hurt. I'm going to get my value for him, and somebody's going to need him, right? So I'm going to catch them lacking. They're not going to have that depth, and those pieces that to you are depth become starters to other people, right? And also in the sense of your own team too. If you're somebody, listen, not everyone's active in the trade market. If you're somebody who don't like to trade, guess what? Having depth is also power in that sense too, because if a guy gets hurt, let's say you have Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers. Devontae Adams gets hurt. Now Jacoby Myers saves you from getting robbed from somebody else. In the trade market, we absolutely take advantage of other people's misfortunes, right? Like I said, Keontae Ingram and James Conner. James Conner gets hurt, I'm picking up Keontae Ingram. There's no friends in fantasy football. So if you don't trade, that's okay. Just make sure you have good depth. And if you don't, and you're in my league, you're going to get a lot of trade offers. Some you might think are bad. Some you might think are good. But at the end of the day, if you don't take it or you don't make moves, you're probably paying me or somebody else money. You're probably not having it in your pocket at the end of the year. And again, going back to trades, I love to trade so much. And I think that's what winners do. We like to trade. Never be afraid to send a trade. Never. Know who's available in free agency. If you're trading a guy, Jelani Woods, in a 10-man and there's 10 good tight ends on 10 teams, you don't have much leverage there, right? But never be afraid to send a trade. If it's in a deeper league, you never know how someone values somebody. And guess what? People always tell me all the time. They're like, JC, you send the worst trades, and that's okay. The worst somebody can say is no. If I don't get you today, I'm going to get you tomorrow. Jadakiss, one of my favorite rappers, said that. It's okay to be known as the guy who offers bad trades. Hand in hand with that, I think those guys are usually the ones who are also known as being winners too. So that's a hand in hand kind of rule. I'm always sending trades that other people might say, I wouldn't have done that trade. Guess what? Everybody got choices. Everybody plays a different way. But there's no such thing as a bad trade offer. The worst somebody can say is no. And then at that point, if someone says no, I have the choice. Do I buck up and give them a little bit more? Or do I say, I'll get you next week when you're hurting again, when you lose this week, right? So be real with yourself, but never be afraid to send a trade at all. And it's okay, as a matter of fact, to send the same trade twice, right? So perfect example. If I'm going to trade for Michael Pittman, and I have, let's say, Rashid Rice, and I have Ty Chandler and Dalvin Cook went down, right? And I sent that offer. Someone's like, I think my team's good. I don't want to give away Michael Pittman. That's okay. If Michael Pittman doesn't do good this week and my two players do, I'm going to send that exact same trade next week, because everybody got different strategies. Everybody got choices. They might take it that week. They might not. But, hey, you don't get a yes. You don't get, up. You don't get, how do I want to say this? You don't get a win, a minor win, unless you try. You absolutely have to try. And there will be people that tell you your trades suck. That's okay. As long as you get a couple of trades out, you're probably going to be for the better. And if not, that's okay. I'll have to win other ways, by pickups, by other strategies. But never be afraid to send any trade at all. Another big thing that I play. Now, listen, I'm self-employed. But it doesn't matter. I wake up whenever I want to. Now I do rental property. It doesn't matter if I was self-employed. 2 years ago, I was a gym teacher in a high school, and I had to wake up at 7 a.m. Now, I'll tell you what, one commonality that I played fantasy then, I play fantasy now. Every single Wednesday morning, I was setting an alarm for 3 o'clock in the morning when waivers cleared. There are sleepless nights in fantasy. If you're trying to seriously win, you might sleep 2 hours one night. How much do you want to win is my question. Do you really want to make some money? Because if you do, you're going to have to set that alarm. And guess what? You might have a really important job. You might not. You might have kids, and you aren't able to get up at 3 a.m, or maybe you are in that sense. But anyhow, hey, wake up at 6. Wake up a little bit earlier. Know when your waivers clear. Yahoo is my favorite platform to play on. Yahoo waivers clear at 3 a.m. I am up at 3. All those guys who I didn't want to burn my waiver claim on, I'm going to try to get them early, first come, first get, service on the waiver wire at 3 a.m. Again, waking up at 6 a.m. is fine, but know your leagues. Going back to that number one rule, know who you're playing against. You might play against people who check at their job, at their work from home job at noon, 12:30 on a Wednesday, and you might have a little bit of leeway in that sense, but I'm not leaving it to chance that somebody else might beat me to a guy. I am waking up when waivers claim. So absolutely be aware of when your waivers claiming, no matter what league it is, right? And finally, for my segment, before I pass it over about waivers and trades to Steve, is look at other teams for waivers. I talked about looking at other teams during the draft, but also look at other teams for waivers too, because I might be first place in my league, right? And also don't be content. Just because you're first place, just because your team's good, your team 100% can always get better. Look at other teams when it comes waiver time, right? You might have somebody who had an injury. Kyron Williams could be hurt in week 1. Blake Corum could be out there, and I might have the number one waiver claim, and my team's looking good for week 2. But damn well, I'm going to use that waiver claim, and I'm going to pick up Blake Corum, and I'm going right to that team and sending them offers right off the bat. So if you're not looking at other teams, what they need, then really you're doing yourself a disservice when it comes to trades, because you always need to know who needs what team needs what position-wise, because having that mentality is having power. Again, having depth is having power. Some guys I might pick up on waivers, not even for my own benefit, but somebody else's, right? And that person might just say, JC, you could offer me the world, and I'm going to stick it to you, and you're going to hang on to that guy. That's okay. I'll just trade him to somebody else. But I guarantee you, if you look at other people's teams when you're doing your waiver claims, you might see something that you weren't seeing before as far as trades out there. So, and I was going back to, I said Jelani Woods. Jelani Woods, that example I used before, he might pop off, right? So you picked him up in your draft late and you want to hang on to him because you don't really need, your team's doing well. You don't really need much else right now. And then boom, week 2, Jelani Woods pops off and somebody's tight end goes down with an injury. Somebody's underperforming. Jelani Woods now, if he's on your team, send him already. But if he's on waivers, absolutely, I'm going to pick him up and send him to that team who their tight end just got hurt. So no friends in fantasy football. Always look at other teams when you're doing waivers, your draft, no matter what time of the year it is, and use your claim to your advantage, but not only yours, other people's as well. Thank you for listening for that segment. That was a long segment. Steve, I'm going to pass it back to you for talking about schedules.
Yeah, so one of the things I think we both agree upon is ignore bye weeks when you're drafting, go for best player. But once the season has begun and start, you really start looking, going to week 4, week 5, week 6, you got to start looking at the latter half of the schedule. You got to look at strength of schedule. Look at your position that you've got in your running backs and receivers. Look at their strength of schedule. Do they have a rough playoff schedule? Do they have an easy playoff schedule? Look at all your positions and kind of try to foresee what might happen. Now, there are certain players absolutely you're never going to move away from. Justin Jefferson, Christian McCaffrey, like no matter what type of schedule that they're going to be going against. But if you got players who I would say the lower tier, mid to lower tier players that have maybe they're going against the 5th best defense the first week of the playoffs. Maybe you start making moves to get a player that's going to have a better playoff schedule. You've got to start looking at that. And one thing, we talked about Yahoo. Yahoo actually does a really good job showing you in color code, like the strength of schedule. They'll show you if it's red, that means it's tough. If it's yellow, it's okay. If it's green, man, you want to have that player in your roster. So use those tools that these fantasy platforms have to help you guys out. Sleeper does the same thing. They do a color-coded way of helping you kind of get an understanding of what the player's schedule is going to look like, especially that latter half. Too many people are always looking week to week. I'm the guy who looks 3 to 4 weeks ahead to look at their schedules so I can get the best possible players. That's where the activity is involved. I may be trading for a player that may not have been performing great right now, but they may have the best, easiest schedule going into the playoffs, and they may blow up. So I may get this player at really the ultimate low for them, and people will question and scratch their head like, why do you want this player? And then all of a sudden, 10 weeks later, I'm in the playoffs and this guy's going off. So, like, you've got to look at those things. I think too many times people don't think about it. I think week to week to week, which is fine. And I want you to if I'm going against you. But if you're already looking 5 to 6 weeks ahead of you, that is the player I don't want to play against because he already knows. Like, that's where you got to make, I think, some of the best strategic moves that you can make is always looking at your playoff schedule.
Absolutely, man. And be real with yourself. Look at your team. If it's week 8 and you're sitting at 2-6, probably not going to send a trade for a guy who has a tough up and coming schedule those next 4 weeks. Be attentive, look at those kind of things. Be real with yourself. If you're the team who's 8-2 and it's week 10, you can still make trades. Yeah, you might take on a guy who has a tough next 2 weeks, next 3 weeks, but guess what? You're going to be in playoffs. So if that matchup at the end of the season is green, that's all good with me. I can take that risk. I can take that hit, right? So be real with yourself in all senses of, if you're somebody who doesn't have depth, be real with yourself and know I got to make a trade, right? I might get some wacky trades sent my way, but I might have to take that trade in order to survive, to stay alive in the playoff contention too. Absolutely. Before we get into our next point, I wanted to mention the company we work for, IDP Guys, is a great up-and-coming company. If you haven't subscribed, please do that already. But if you have not subscribed to our website, idpguys.org, go ahead and do that. We're still running the promo for your first month for only $1. We have so many great trends videos. We have so many great other videos from other great team members, great articles that Steve and other team members write that I use in my research too. Guys, this content for the first month, we're talking about the biggest month of fantasy football right now. You can only get it for $1. What a steal that is. So go to idpguys.org, type in the promo code mock draft. When you make sure you type in that promo code, because you ain't getting it if you don't type it in. Type in that promo code mock draft when you subscribe, when you check out for your 1 month subscription, and your first month will be only $1. Again, idpguys.org, and you're going to use the promo code mock draft. Next rule here is, hey, listen, I've been playing since 2012. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I've been playing 10 years or 1 year. I played in a lot of leagues, and what I know is that if you are not active in especially free agents and waivers, but also trades, I'll go ahead and say trades too. Add that to the list. If you're not active in those regards, don't expect to win. Just don't. I know some people I play with are like, man, I drafted this team and I thought they were good, and just guys got hurt, guys got underperformed, guys got lazy, and that guy was you, because you did not adapt, to your team, to the hands you were dealt. I try not to. I don't want to say never. I try not to make excuses like, oh, somebody got hurt. Listen, I get guys in and out on trades every week that, like, I can overcome that. And if you don't trade, you're not really, waking up at 3 a.m. or 6 a.m. to scavenge the waiver wire, and you're just, looking at leftover guys. Don't expect to win straight up. I've never seen. I've been in so many leagues over the years. I've never seen somebody inactive win a league straight up. There's luck involved, and I might have the best team, and that doesn't mean I'm always going to win, or I might not have the best team, and I still might win. But yeah, if you're not active, if you're not giving it your best week in to week out, be real with yourself. Don't expect to win. We all got money on the line, and if it's in a $10, $20 league, really is not that much dent in your pocket. But if you're playing for big money, always be active, always be trading, sending offers, being attentive to offers that are sent you, and always use those waiver claims wisely. I'll say you don't always have to use them. I like to say don't use them. If we're not going to pick up defense team defense or kickers with waivers, absolutely not. General rule, I don't pick up IDP guys with waivers. I try not to burn them until I really need them or another team needs them and I have trade power, right? So try not to use the waiver claims excessively. Try to, stockpile them for when you need them. And another thing out there I just kind of learned over the last couple of years is if you are in a Yahoo league specifically, I don't know if other leagues, other platforms do this. If you draft 16 out of 16, the last pick in the first round, you have the first waiver claim. On the other hand, if you have the first pick of any draft, you have the last waiver claim. So one league that I'm in that I just won last year, the trophy's sitting back there. We do something cool. We say, hey, based on rankings, you get to pick where you are. I really don't generally take the first pick if I win, because I know that I might take 4 or 5 because I look at the 4 or 5 guys and say I want to get one of those guys. But I keep in considerations that the later you draft, the higher your week 1 waiver claim is. And you might tell me like that really doesn't mean much to you. But when we look at last year and we have guys like Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, those were the week 1 waiver claims you could have gotten if they weren't owned already. So it does mean a lot to me. So, be strategic and be stingy when using those waiver wire claims. Steve, got anything for that, or you want to move on to the next session?
Yeah, I mean, waivers are huge. I mean, if you're not going to participate in waiver claims or trades or any type of activity, just play best ball at that point. That's kind of where I see it. Like I've had conversations with people that I've played fantasy with the last couple of years. That might make 1 or 2 moves during the season, and then like you mentioned, if you're not active going after moves, because let's be honest, football is 100% injury. Like that's what it is. Everyone's going to get hurt. So if you're not active on these players, just play best ball at this point. Like that's a great format for someone who isn't going to be able to be on their phone pretty often throughout the day, or pretty often, on a Sunday, for example. Like too many times have I do my start and sit videos and people asking questions, or they get to the stream too late because they can't ask and they forget to set their lineup. Just do best ball at that point. Just move into something that's going to be a little bit more better for your lifestyle. And that's what's great about best ball. But if you're like me or Johnny, if you're in redraft, you're in Dynasty, like you've got to work those damn waivers. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, but you got to do it. You got to go after those type of things and be active in the trades. I could tell you there's a difference between a league that trades and a league that doesn't. It's just
Mhm.
not as fun. So I think that's a big one. Now, kind of spinning this, I'm a commissioner in I don't know how many leagues. And I'm also, of course, in leagues that I'm not a commissioner. One thing I want to mention is if you're not a commissioner, do you as a league do something for your commish? Do you go maybe you give them a little bit of your prize money, or do you do something for them for putting everything together? Make sure the league's ready. Make sure they're handling those crazy trades that people are arguing about, or maybe there was an accidental drop and someone grabbed that player off of waivers, and commissioners have to do a lot. I know it's not the hardest work. We're not talking like labor, but we're talking about somebody who has to be active in the space. Do you do things for your commissioner? Those are some things I think would be something you can always talk about amongst your league mates. Maybe give the commish something, or just again, just thank them for helping kind of create the league and the vibe and getting everything going. And the other thing I think is fun, as a league, we talked about a lot of times people are playing for money. Maybe you're playing for pride, but a lot of people are playing for money. What does that look like? Are you doing prizes? Or are you actually doing cash? Are you doing it where you're just having fun? Like in one of my leagues that I've created a few years ago, it's a league that my wife and I play together. We've got our friends together. It's husband versus wives league, and it's so much fun. There's no money involved. There's a lot of smack talking throughout the season. It's something that we all look forward to, and it's that fun camaraderie where we get to go against our wives and see who's going to be the best. Is it the wives or the husbands? And the other thing is, I think we don't talk about enough, or I think we're starting to see a little bit more, is the league punishment. Is someone wearing a leotard to the live draft because they lost last season? Are they wearing a shirt, or the infamous eating at McDonald's or a Waffle House for 24 hours? Like, do you have those type of things to make the league even more fun than just for some money? Like, where is that look like? For me, when football season's around the corner, we're 15 days away. I'm looking forward, I think, more than just the money. I think I'm looking forward to the trash talk, the pride. That's so much fun to me. So are those things that you're getting your league mates involved in, things you can consider doing this upcoming season?
It's funny you mentioned that, man. I'll give everyone a good idea here. That trophy back there that I had mentioned before. I play in this league where I'm in Pittsburgh. I got friends, the commissioners in North Carolina. One guy's in South Carolina. We got guys all over the map. So it's tough to do something like we all do together, or the winner has to like do something, and we're really not too connected. It's kind of like we're all grown adults now. But one thing we do is, this is simple. If you have a trophy, when you get that trophy engraved, it should be the last place person pays, for the winner. If the winner is going to tote it around for a year, last place can pay for that trophy engraving. So that's a good idea
What we do.
if you're looking for something small and not cutthroat in that sense too. But yeah, having that last place, nobody wants to finish last place, and chances are, if you do, you're probably just not active. Anything can happen, but if you trade and you pick up these waiver wires, you follow fantasy pretty well. I could say 90% of the time you're not coming in last. So
Yeah.
don't let it be you. Don't let it
And
be you.
we have a traveling trophy for our home league, and yeah, same thing. The person who's last has to pay for the engravement and obviously hand delivering it the day of our live draft that we do. So it's always fun. Unfortunately, one of my buddies has been the loser the last 3 years, so I think he gets discounts now because he has had to do it every single year. So it's been rough for him.
Just say he lost it every year for the discount.
Yeah.
And listen, guys, I told you before, these were some cutthroat rules. I know everyone, it's tough to play. Maybe you don't have time. You're busy with wife and kids, job, whatever. I get that. But if you are trying to be the best fantasy football manager, listen to what we had said before, and all that, those tactics can cause some heated conversations. Maybe guys get pissed off with your trade offers. Maybe the commissioner gets mad at you. Maybe he tells you stop sending guys bad offers. Maybe somebody's screenshotting your trade and sending it to the commissioner with laughing faces. Listen, things do get heated throughout the season. We all got big money on the line, but at the end of the day, like I said, we're not sitting here and arrogant and this is not about I'm better than you. I kicked your ass. It's nothing about that. At the end of the day, where I come from, if I beat you, I'm going to shake your hand and say good matchup, especially if it was, if it was a blowout, I'll probably say, man, you got unlucky on that. But having humility, having integrity, having respect, because if you're returning to that league again, people might not like my trade offers. They might say I can't even offer you a trade, JC. You got the max pending, and I can't even offer you a trade. That happens more than you'd think. But at the end of the day, I treat people with respect. If they beat me, I tell them nothing but good win, because I put a lot of time into this. And if you can beat me at my own game, I have a lot of respect for you. I truly do. That's not just smoke. And I'm not trying to burn any bridges, damage any relationships. I need these people to make trades to help make my team better. And also, I'm just a kind-hearted person. So especially if I'm playing a league where I'm going to see these guys next year, don't burn any bridges. Go out, shake hands at the end of the season. Guess what? You might have the best team. I thought I had the best team by far in the 16-man league I was in. I got beat. In the championships. I took second place, made a lot of money still. And I told the guy who I told you before, I don't make trades to guys who have good teams. I didn't make this guy many trades because his team was pretty damn good too. And I told him at the end of the year, man, go ahead and get it. You had the best team this year, and there's nothing wrong with that. So everybody got different styles. Everybody got different trades, different strategies involved. So another thing is, don't knock anybody's strategy. If somebody's not active, I'm not like blowing up their phone like, oh, can you check this trade? Hey, if they check it, they check it. If not, I was trying to help them out. And if they don't check it, they don't get that help, right? So don't knock somebody's style. I might have guys who I play with who are pretty casual and really don't check that much. I'm not going to blow up their phone. I'm not going to knock how they play. I'm not going to text the commissioner and say kick them out because they're not active. Everybody got things in life. You never know what somebody has coming until you walk their shoes. So everybody has different choices and ways they play. Now, if somebody comes up to me and says, like, my team, I thought it was so good and I made 4 moves all year, I'll be the first person to tell them you got to be more active than that. But unless they're really putting themselves out there like that or kind of arrogant, I'm not really going to put them in their place. And hey, and who knows, maybe their strategy works next year and mine doesn't, and they end up beating me. So yeah, another thing to keep in mind is, like I said, you might have the best team. Doesn't mean you're always going to win. Fantasy, of course, has a lot of luck, whether it be injuries, poor performance, bad matchups, all these things take into account. So even if you do put in the most time, absolutely you're going to have your best odds, but doesn't guarantee anything. You might still lose. So always keep those things in considerations. Win gracefully, lose gracefully. One of the best coaches I ever had taught me not much, but he taught me the best quote I think I learned in sports in my life is that we win as a team and we lose as a team. And that's the same thing here in fantasy. So, hey, play cutthroat, be a shark in the water. But at the end of the day, always, be a good person and don't let the competition get the best of you. And really just try your best and listen to what we said, and you'll be in great position this year to be a great manager, not only this year, but moving forward. Steve, is there anything else you'd like to add on that before we sign off?
No. Make sure you try to win, implement some of these strategies if they make sense. Again, have fun. That's what we're here for. Have fun, take people's money, enjoy fantasy, watch our videos, make sure you're subscribed, read our articles. And I'm telling you, you will have a lot of fun. That fantasy has enhanced the NFL because of this space. So, enjoy the Sundays. Actually, now it's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Mondays. I mean, it's almost every day now in the NFL. So enjoy it when it comes. Preseason's here before we know it. And again, I think we try to give you the best strategies we've come up with that we deal with and implement in our own leagues, whether we commission them or not, just to help you guys out. That's what we're here for. We want to try to be as helpful as we can so you guys can have fun, make some money, have some pride out there, and enjoy it.
Yeah, and damn right. One more thing, man. When your commissioner, if he sends up that text like, hey, we're going to renew the league, any recommendations, tell him this year to make your league an IDP league. And I guarantee you rock with us, you'll have an advantage over other people. So thank you for listening. As always, we will see you next week. Stay healthy and stay active in the streets and get your research done, because if you're not, you're lacking already.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.